Hi, how are you? Are you ready to talk about punctuation and grammar and all the other things on the pretest? Me too. It's good to have you with me here. I'm in the Casa de Reader. That's right, right? Je parle français, parle espagnol, so I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, so there might be any sorts of things going on behind me back there. Charlie, Annie, dog, wife. I said the wife last. That's probably not a good sign. Anyway, lots going on. So bear with me as I go through some things. So today we're going to talk about all things grammar. We're going to talk about things like dangling modifiers. Do you hear something? No. We're going to talk about what else? Apostrophes, apostrophe use. Uh, Look at the dog. Is it the dog that I'm hearing? What is that? What could that be? What's going on? What's going on the bottom of the screen? That doesn't look good. Oh no. Oh no. It's not. It can't be. I think it is. It's the comma. We're going to talk about the comma. The scariest punctuation mark ever. Hold on. Stop this music. I hate this music. It scares me. Ah, I teach college. Um, yeah, this little guy. You like my artwork? It's pretty good, huh? Is the most abused thing I've ever seen. And hi, Scout. That's Scout the dog. Where's Scout? Hey, hi. You want to come here and say hi? Scout is her little rescue doggy. She's 2, and we named her because Charlie's in Boy Scouts, Annie's in Girl Scouts, and my favorite novel of all time, To Kill a Mockingbird. There's Annie. Hi. The whole reader clan eventually is going to come in here. Anyway, so let's get right to it as much as we can. That I've wasted, I don't know how many minutes, 3 minutes almost, and talking about your pretest. First, I want to thank you for going through this, especially the survey section is important to me to see if you read the news, if you're a consumer of journalism, that's important if you are, because you're going to be able to analyze how journalists do their stories. Hopefully, you're going to start to see trends in certain news organizations as well. That's a big part of this class is that you become more literate in the world of journalism, since it's obviously such a big topic these days in our country. So thanks for filling out all those things. It always interests me what you where you get your news. So some of you are, for instance, big time Fox News people. Some of you are big time CNN people. Others don't really watch anything at all. And I have no biases toward anybody who goes to wherever they go, or if they don't um, consume the news at all. It's all good. It won't affect you in here in the least. So we'll talk more about that as we go through the semester on different news organizations and what people think about them. The what I want to get to for most of this is the grammar and punctuation mechanics section. So you have a supplemental that's called Pretest Supplemental. Not a very creative title, but effective. So if you head to Files, and if you haven't already, and pull that up along with your pretest results on Canvas. So if you need to pause me, pause me. But you should have your pretest results. Those are where I've annotated your answers, and the pretest supplemental. So pause me if you need to get those up. I'm just going to continue talking. So the opening topics are how you get your news, what's important to you when you visit news sites. That interests me too. Most of you chose accuracy as your number one thing that's important to you. That's good. I like that accuracy is high up on your list. Um, we are going to look at the grammar punctuation section. I'm going to kind of bounce around a little bit to some of these responses. As I put in the comments to all of you, some of you, you know, if you didn't do well in this, it could be various reasons. Maybe you just flew through it because you knew it was just for a completion grade. So lying, laying, doesn't matter. I'm just going to choose one of them. But if you did treat this as like an SAT, that you really want to try to do your best, and you, according to your base knowledge of grammar and punctuation mechanics, this is what I truly believe the answer is, and you got a bunch wrong, then then we've got some fundamental writing things that we need to go through. I have a little coffee here. This is my University Glee Club mug. I was in the Glee Club, so I could, like Lionel Richie, sing to you, but I will not. Anyway, so if you were struggling with this, then it's time to get this rectified. Now, not every Journalism 201 instructor does this. In fact, I don't know if any of them do. If any of them take the time to go through these basic grammar things, they just tell you you need to know them. I'm going to kind of say that because I don't have time to really go into the weeds with lie versus lay or apostrophe use or comma use. We just don't have that time. In 16 weeks, the university tells me you've got to get through interviewing skills and reporting skills, and they have to write stories, and you have to deal with leads and how to write quotation. There's just a bunch we have to cover, and so I just don't have the time to go through a lot of this. It fascinates me that I'll get some students for that this section was pretty easy. They missed maybe 3 or 4, and I get other students who miss 17 of these out of these 29 sentences. And I think largely it deals with your background and what you had when you were in high school. Did you have teachers that were sticklers for these sorts of things that really did teach you punctuation and grammar, or did you have the kind of English teachers that were like, the sentiment about what you're writing is way more important than the uh, uh, lost my train of thought. Sentiment is more important than the specifics of everything. So wherever you are, that's where you are. And for some of you, it's just going to mean a lot more work to get up to the level that I'm expecting you to be. That's kind of how it works. This is college, and as much as I'd like to hold your hand through a lot of this, I just can't. Don't have that time. But I will say I'll give you as much time as I can. I've had a couple people reach out to me already who want to meet with me and go through this one-on-one. I will do that with you. I've got friends who text me probably 3 times a week or so, and then will ask me. I'm writing a letter to my boss, or I have former students from 10 years ago who say, hey, I'm switching jobs and I need to write a cover letter. How does this look? Always happy to do that. I'm really weird and dorky that way, that I enjoy talking about these sorts of things. All right, but that's on you. That's your decision on how much you care about this. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming classes about caring about these sorts of things. But let's get to it. Number one, the boy noticed the dog was lying or laying on the ground, and number two also deals with lay and lie. This is a tricky one. You can look up lie versus lay online. I didn't put a link on that, but the key here is that I always think of lie as recline. There's an I in both lie and recline. So if you're going to recline on the couch, or recline in a chair, then you're going to lie. Lie and recline mean the same thing. Lay and place both have an A in it. So if I'm going to place a pencil on the table, then I'm going to lay the pencil on the table. Okay, so think of it that way. Some people think of lay that you need an object. I'm going to lay a pencil. I'm going to lay my head on the pillow. That's another way to think of it. But I like lie and recline, lay and place to help you figure out which is correct. It gets a little tricky in past tense for number two, for instance. So if number two were in present tense, we would say my sister is going to lie down. My sister's going to recline. Okay. The problem is the past tense of lie is lay. Why? Who invented that? Who decided that the past tense of lie would be lay? But it is, and so for number two, when my sister lay down, that's the past tense of recline or reclined. Past tense of lie is lay. Past tense of lay is laid. Past tense, using the past participle with lie. She had lain down on that chair on that couch before. She had laid the pencil on that table before. So lie, lay, lain, lay, laid, laid. So confusing, frustrating. If you can't get it, avoid it. That's the that's the answer for everything. My wife, otherwise known as the luckiest woman in the world, will avoid things. So she'll just say, I'm going to go rest on the couch. She doesn't want to deal with whether it's lie or lay. She knows if she says it wrong, I'm going to do this. And she doesn't want to deal with that. So I'm going to go rest. Sure, works for me. Three and number six, number seven. Those all deal with adjectives versus adverbs. You can't be real upset. That boy can't be real cute. That girl isn't real funny. She isn't real tall. He isn't real fast. It's really, always really, because really is an adverb describing how somebody is, how tall, funny, cute, upset, in this case for number three. So it has to be really. Number six has to be loudly because it tells how she played her iPod. It's got to be loudly. All right, that's an adverb describing the verb. Number seven in this case, it's a state of physical being, and so it would have to be well. Now, well is usually an adverb with an action verb. He played well, she ran well, but in this case, it works with the to be verb was. I was well, or I felt, and that's also in this case a linking verb. Felt well. It's a state of being. So adjectives, adverbs can be tricky. I gave you a link to help you with that. We're going to get to a number of these later in the semester when we go through the AP style book and some other basic grammar issues. Effect versus effect. The general rule for this, and this is number 10 on your list, and it also appears later in the pretest, is that effect with the A is almost always the verb, and effect with an E is almost always a noun. So the effect, E, of the storm was 10 inches of snow. But in this case, in number 10, the emotional song affected with an A because it's the verb form. Here's a good one. At number 11, choosing between all right, A-L-R-I-G-H-T, versus the two-word all right. A-L-R-I-G-H-T does not exist. I will repeat that. A-L-R-I-G-H-T does not exist. It's not a word. It's not ever, ever a word in that form. Never. It's always the other version. Always. Even when you're writing that somebody's talking slang. All right, dude. That's a terrible. I don't even know what I'm doing there. But it would still be A-L-L space. All right. Now you're going to see that wrong all the time. You will see A-L-R-I-G-H-T all the time. It's always wrong. Always. Now eventually, someday, that version of all right will be acceptable, might even replace the other version, mainly because of your generation that sees A-L-R-I-G-H-T and believes that to be correct, and it gets more and more, it gets used more and more as we go along. But for now, the two-word form is the only form that is correct, always. The next one, let's go to 13. It's with apostrophe versus it's with possessive. I haven't given you a link to this. The same thing with your and your, Y-O-U-R, and then Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. This is basically people have a lot of trouble with apostrophes, but this is possessive. So number 13, it's wasn't sure if its purpose, the mouse's purpose, and so it's possessive, just its versus it apostrophe s. The apostrophe means that there's a missing letter when it's used with its or your, and in this case it's the I from it is. It's been smited from the apostrophe. It's the A in you are. It's been cut out and replaced. So for instance, number 15, if you are frustrated with, you wouldn't say you are ability. It has to be Y-O-U-R. I don't see a ton of problems with this with students, so I didn't give a link to that. But if you really struggle with those different forms, then you can. There are a million websites you can go to. I like Grammar Girl. She's kind of sassy. Grammarly is a good website that I use. I actually have Grammarly. I don't know if it's an app. I don't know what it is, but it's on my computer. I use it when I'm typing. I'm flying through an email or something, and Grammarly will highlight different words. It's kind of like spell check that may or may not be wrong. Typically, Grammarly is correct. That I've used that maybe I'm missing a letter or I've done something wrong, and it'll highlight words or I'll use slang like gonna, Gonna, and it'll highlight that and say, it's not really a word. Are you sure you want to use that? So I would suggest putting Grammarly on your computer if you want. There's a link to the under in your pretest supplemental about the comma with Grammarly. So just an idea. Let's talk about the apostrophe in numbers 16 and 17. Boy, I tell you, the apostrophe just gets abused too. It's number 2 on the list next to the comma. People they see that S at the end of a word and they just feel like there has to be an apostrophe there. And I see that all the time on restaurant menus. There's a sign in downtown Milford, or there was. I didn't see it last time I was there. Milford's a little town, kind of the northeast side of Cincinnati. But on the downtown main street, there's a sign that says guns. They sell guns. Gun apostrophe S. It's been there for decades. And it drives me nuts. It's just guns. It's more than one gun. Just add an S. That's all you need. But for some reason, people just don't seem to catch that. I've seen menus that say tacos, and it'll be TACO apostrophe S. It's like it's taco is the person who owns it. Anyway, so here's the trick with apostrophes. Is it plural? Then just add an S. So look at number 17. All I know is when you walk past where the Johnsons live, watch out for their dog. It's more than one Johnson lives in that house. Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, little Sally Johnson, little Billy Johnson, and their dog, Tippy Johnson. So there's more than one Johnson there. Just add an S. That's where the Johnsons live, where they live. Okay, really simple. But then you have to decide: is it plural? And 17, it's not, or is it possessive? And for 17, it's not possessive. The Johnsons live. They're not possessing the word live, so it's just plural. For 16, though, it is possessive, where the Walker's house is. So we have more than one Walker, Mr. and Mrs. Walker, and little Tommy Walker. So that's where they live. So you add an S. So we know there has to be an S. Then you have to decide: is it possessive? And if so, you need an apostrophe. And in this case, it is. It's their house. And so you would put the apostrophe after the S because there's more than one Walker living there. All right, so it's tricky. I know some of you struggle with it, and I know some teachers just didn't teach it or didn't teach it well. There's Grammar Bites, BYTES, and I put a link to their chompchomp.com, which is a pretty good handout that goes through some of those apostrophe rules. Now we get to the comma, which is, golly day, it's, I don't know, I see students just throw commas in wherever. Commas the problem with commas is in some cases it's a pretty subjective thing. You think it just works there for some reason. And a lot of times it's because of you wanting readers to pause. That's all punctuation really is. It's the attempt to manipulate readers, to tell them when to stop, full stop with a period, when to pause with a comma. A semicolon is an anticipatory punctuation mark. So commas, there are some hard and fast rules about commas. And then there are other times where, yes, it is subjective when you use them. Of course, one of the biggest topics is the Oxford comma, which some people love. You might be one of those people. Some people hate, and some people think, sometimes I use it, sometimes I shouldn't use it. And I'm one of those people where it absolutely needs to be used sometimes, and sometimes it shouldn't be used at all. So let's look at the comma for number 19. We have this phrase, Karen always made a point of going to Skyline. Then you have which had become her favorite place to eat. You need a comma there. That sets off this the phrase starting with which. So a comma needs to go there. For number 2, This is called a double predicate. There are two verbs in there. Isabel eats skyline and knows. So no comma because even though you have that word and there, after the word and, it's not a full sentence. It's just, so it's not a compound sentence. Now, if I put and she knows, then you've got a compound sentence, and you have to have a comma before the word and. That's a compound sentence. But because it's just two verbs in the predicate part of the sentence, eats and knows, you don't need a comma. The number 21 deals with commas after introductory phrases, where you need a comma every time. So if you look at number 21, if you really want to know about me, all you need to do is ask. There's a natural pause there if you read this sentence. And I suggest reading your sentences out loud. You'll feel that pause. Any of you who are singers, you might have sheet music that actually tells you where to breathe. And when they do that, they put a comma where to breathe. And in this case, if I read 21, if you really want to know about me, all you have to do is ask. There's a natural pause there. The comma goes right there. That happens again, this introductory phrase, when you get to the paragraph that's after number 29, the number 4 sentence in that, where it says, finally, the theme music to Jeopardy began, or to American Idol began playing. If you listen to me read that, you'll hear. Finally, the theme music, there's just a slight pause there. It's an introductory, in this case, word, not a phrase. You have to put a comma after the introductory word or phrases. It happens again on sentence number 9. Eventually, and then you need a pause there before you get to Ryan Seacrest. All right, you've got to have a comma there. I have put a Grammarly link for commas. They are tough. But try to study those when you get time. There are other sites to go to. I mentioned Grammar Girl. Purdue University has an online writing lab. They name it OWL. That's pretty good with commas. You're going to see some various philosophies on commas, and especially with the Oxford comma. I think the OWL website still says to use it. The AP Style book says no, journalists don't use them unless you need to, which I'll get to later. In the semester, but for the most part, you don't use an Oxford comma. The only time you use one is if you are clarifying that list. So an Oxford comma goes after a list. I like pizza, cake, and ice cream. Right? So pizza, comma, cake, and then the Oxford comma would be that one after cake before the word and ice cream. Um, AP style book journalists say no, you don't put that don't need it. Pizza, cake, and ice cream. It's simple. Pizza, cake, ice cream. 3 very clear, distinctive things, and you don't need that comma before and. There are times when you use it, and that's when one of those items would cause confusion. So if I say I like pizza, comma, peanut butter and jelly, comma, and ice cream. So peanut butter and jelly has the and in there, and I need a comma after jelly to show that peanut butter and jelly is one thing, it's one entity. So that's how you would clarify that. And so I would say absolutely you need an Oxford comma. That's all punctuation is. It's for clarification, it's to help readers understand what you're trying to say, and of course it's for manipulation. It's to force readers to pause, or in some cases without punctuation on purpose, to speed up. All right, enough of commas for now. The collective nouns. If you click on that link, you're going to see a bunch of collective nouns. Words like family and jury and team. These are all nouns, but they denote more than one person. You know, in your family, you have more than one person in your family. A jury is comprised of 12 people. The problem, though, is that those nouns are actually singular entities, and I can prove that by using a word like team, for instance, in a sentence. So this goes with, if you'll look at numbers 22, 23, and 24 on your pretest. Team is a singular noun, and I can prove it. I can say, that team is good. And so I'm using the verb is, which is a singular verb. He is good. She is good. Singular people, and so team is a singular thing. That means anytime I reference team, I have to use a singular pronoun. So I would say, so for instance, the word he is singular. He is good. If I referenced he, I would have to use a singular pronoun his. He found his baseball bat in the garage. His, not their baseball bat. He found his baseball bat in the garage. Well, I have to do the same thing with words like team and family. And if you look at number 23, offensive line. If you look at number 24, Miami. Anytime I reference those words, I have to use singular pronouns. So I can't say in number 22, a team should always be sure they are prepared. That would be like saying he should always be sure they are prepared. That doesn't work. Doesn't work. Team is singular, and so you have to use the pronoun it to describe it. It's weird. It sounds weird for people to use that. Same thing with number 23, the offensive line. Is. I would use is with that. Is terrible. Okay? So because it's a singular collective noun, I have to use the pronoun its to describe it. Miami is also a collective noun. Miami University is comprised of thousands of students and hundreds of professors and other faculty and staff, but it's a singular thing. Miami is a lovely place. I'm proving that it's singular, and so you have to write Miami saw its perfect football season come to an end, and it probably happened in the first game of the year. All right, that's tricky. That is another level of understanding grammar. If you can stay away from Miami um, lost their game or Miami saw their football. If you can get away from that and realize that's a singular pronoun, you are advanced in grammar use. So when there's a big list of collective nouns on that website. You need to study them. You need to realize that when those nouns happen, that you have to use singular pronouns with them. All right, that's a big one. We move on to I versus me. Most of you did pretty well on this. 25 is a tricky one. I tricked you on this one. Finish the sentence. When it comes to, in other words, there are missing words at the end of the sentence on number 25. When it comes to random knowledge on 80s rock bands, no one knows more than. How would you finish that sentence? You would say, no one knows more than I know or I do. And so we've taken off the verb know or do at the end, and you're left with I. No one knows more than I. So I is correct, believe it or not, with that. We do this a lot. We cut off words all the time. If someone says, hey, do you want to go uptown? You don't say, no, I do not want to go uptown, or yes, I do want to go uptown. You just say, nope, or yep. And all the rest of that is implied. Sorry. So same thing happens here in 25. No one knows more than I know or than I do. Now, if you're with your friends, um, use me. If you're hanging out with your friends and you say, she's so much prettier than me, that I would do that. Then she's so much prettier than I. Because if you use I, first of all, your friends are going to look at you like, aren't you in college? Do you not know grammar? Why would you use I there? Or if you have to explain to them why it is I, she's so much prettier than I am. See, because there's a verb at the end, and then they're going to hate you. They're going to think you're this elitist, snobby person. So break the rules. Know that it's I. Just like with Miami and its in number 24. Know that it's its. And when you're writing to the proper audience, use its. But in general conversation, go ahead and use their. Oh my God, Miami's football team, they are so bad. Go ahead and say they when you're referencing Miami's football team. But know in your brain that they is not correct. It is so, oh, Miami's football team, it is so bad. Or he's so smarter than I. Don't say that. Say me. You want friends, right? You want friends. You'll lose them if you use proper grammar sometimes. So even I, when I'm typing out text to my buddy Big Dog, who's my best friend in high school, or some other folks, I will use improper grammar. It hurts me, but I'll use it because I know if I use proper grammar, it's going to make a reader. Stop it. Stop being that person. So, know your audience, okay? The other issues for 25, 26 and 27 deal with I and me. The trick here is to get rid of, and I know some of you know this trick, get rid of the words in front of I and me, and that's going to help you know whether it should be I or me. So let's look at number 26. If I said yesterday Sally told, if I got rid of Elizabeth, if the words Elizabeth and the word and, if I get rid of those, I would say yesterday Sally told, and would you use I or me? You'd use me. Yesterday, Sally told me. Okay, try number 27. If that date works for, now get rid of the word you and get rid of the word and. If the date works for, which one would you use? You'd use me. You'd use me. If the date works for me, then let's meet. Okay, so that's how you do the I versus me when you're struggling on which one to choose. Um, Next one is who and whom. I gave a link to this. The easy one for who and whom. It's a lot like knowing the difference between lie and lay. For lie, it's recline. Lay, it's place. For who and whom, who equals he. Being a little sexist here, but I'm being sexist on purpose because he ends in a vowel, and so does who. Um, whom equals him. Him ends in M, and so does whom. You're going to head to Grammar Girl if you don't understand that, or for more on that, with that link with the quick and dirty tips. And it talks about if you can replace it with he, then it's who. If you can replace it with him, then it's whom. So if you look at 28, as captain, I decided to choose Billy first, and it would be whom. Because if you look at the rest of that sentence, you would say, I picked him because he was the fastest. I picked him. Him goes with whom, and so it's whom. 29, I wish Sally, and then who or whom I know hid the diary on Blennerhassett Island, would tell me where it is. I know she hid the diary on Blennerhassett Island. And so she ends in a vowel, and so it's got to be who. Who I know hid the diary on Blennerhassett. By the way, do you know about Blennerhassett Island? See, if we didn't miss class, I would tell you all about Blennerhassett Island. But I'm looking here, I'm already at minute 30, so I got to stop. But so fascinating. It's over by Belpre, Ohio, around the Ohio River. Love that story. Maybe I'll tell it to you. If you remind me, I'll tell you all about Blennerhassett Island. Incredible place. All right, moving on to the paragraph. I'm not going to go through all of this. You've got the who, whom issue again. You've got a sentence fragment in number 2 of that sentence, which goes with number 31. Most of you, most students I know do pretty well with fragments, and so I'm not going to spend much time on that. I've already talked about sentence number 4. Number 32 looks at sentence number 3. That's called a comma splice. If you don't know what a comma splice is, that's when you use a comma instead of a period. When a period needs to go between 2 full sentences, sometimes students put a comma, or all writers put a comma there, and it needs to be a period. A comma is too weak; it can't support 2 sentences. More comma issues throughout this, including another comma splice. There is, let's see, one of the ones I want to talk about is sentence number 8. This is a pronoun antecedent disagreement. Much like when you would use the word team, the team lost its game. Um, it has to be its to, that's the pronoun going with its antecedent, which is team. Same thing with number 8, when Sally says any bully should have to spend their days. Bully is singular, and so any reference to that antecedent has to be singular too. So it has to be his or her days instead of their days. So that's those are tricky when you have singular antecedents. We'll get to that again more later in the semester. We'll also get to dangling modifiers, which happens. Where is that? Oh, I'm sorry. That happened in number 5, the sentence number 5, turning up the volume, Sally's mother. Well, Sally's mother didn't turn up the volume. Sally did. And her mother rushed in to tell Sally to turn the volume down. So that's called a dangling modifier. I've put a link to Grammar Bites for that on your pretest supplemental. If you're confused about dangling modifiers, you can go there and learn a little bit more about that. We will see dangling modifiers later in the semester. Onto the journalism section. The story. Thanks for reading the story. I know it's pretty long. We are going to talk more about this, about whether the story was biased. We'll talk about the source of the story, where was the story published, and about news sources in general. We'll get to that here next week. The big thing for me, my dog is whining. It's okay, Scotty. The big thing for me on this was that you were able to tell what type of story it was, that it was a feature story, that I wanted to see that you knew the purpose of why Joseph Pereira was put in the story. It's okay, Scout. whining dog. That you notice the paragraph size. You'll notice this in all journalism. Dog. You'll notice this in all journalism that paragraphs are largely pretty short, just a couple sentences, and that's done purposely. And that leads me to your response in your final, in your little essay there for number 6, paragraph size. We're going to talk about different um, specific ways to be effective in your writing. The phrase you're going to hear about 1.6 million times this semester is, it's not just what you say that matters, but how you say it. That's written there in your pretest supplemental. Learn that sentence, live that sentence, love that sentence. It's not just what you say that matters, but how you say it. And so think of a big, massive paragraph. Some of you wrote just a giant paragraph. That's all it was. I mean, 400 words. And take a look at that paragraph and you tell me if that looks attractive, if that's something that you want to read. It's not something I want to read, not in that form. Oh my gosh, dog, go away. Um, so we're going to work on paragraph structure, on purposeful paragraph structure, and how that can really transform your message in some ways. Um, the other thing that I want you to work on is avoiding the phrases I think, I feel, in my opinion, personally, I believe, to me. All those are crutches. They're ways to soften your opinion. I know just about all of you use them all the time. So, a teacher will ask you in class, what did you think about the chapter you read last night? Well, personally, I believe that. Nope, we got to get that out of there. That's got to go. Got to go. If you watch any commentators on TV or listen to the radio, people giving their opinion, you will never, well, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, you will not hear, I think, I feel, in my opinion, personally, they are out because, again, it softens your argument. Be bold. Be bold. Just say, Joseph Pereira is a sympathetic character in this, and the article was incredibly biased toward low wage workers. Don't use I think or personally or I believe. That's a hard thing to get rid of. A lot of you use it. It's just your default thing that you do. But I'm going to ask you to really work on getting rid of that when you